As we're entering the end of the NFL regular season, a lot of more trade rumors are popping up. And there's one trade rumor that's been very odd to see, and that is the Kirk Cousins trade rumors. Now, the thing with this is a little bit different because Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are also considered on the trade block because they've requested trades or they've talked about it in the previous year. One player who hasn't is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins guaranteed $45 million in the 2022 season. And the reason why we're talking about trade rumors with Kirk Cousins is because if the Vikings don't make the playoffs this year, why do we want Kirk Cousins? If you guys remember, after the 2017 season, the Minnesota Vikings finished the season 13-3 and got humiliated in the NFC Championship against the Philadelphia Eagles. After that, the Minnesota Vikings decided Case Keenum was the problem on our team, which, by the way, at the time, I thought was the right decision. Case Keenum was undoubtedly not a Super Bowl caliber quarterback who can get us a Super Bowl win. But there was someone entering free agency. Someone out of Washington, someone out of Michigan State drafted in the third round, took RG3's spot, entered free agency, and that someone was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was going to come on our team and be that player who can bring us the next step, what Case Keenum was not able to do with our team. Vikings were also moving away from Teddy Bridgewater as he suffered with too many injuries. Now, the Vikings brought in Kirk Cousins as there was mixed emotions about this. There was both sides. Both sides. I mean, people thought that they were paying him too much money and Case Keenum was not the problem. And then there was me. I said Kirk Cousins bringing him in was the right decision because Case Keenum was the player that was holding the Vikings back. Now, the Vikings brought in Kirk Cousins for one reason, and that one reason was to win a Super Bowl. It's been 4 years with this team. 4 years where we have seen one playoff win with Kirk Cousins on our team. We're going into our fourth playoffs where the Minnesota Vikings are in the playoff picture right now as a 7th seed and are expected to be an easy out in the playoffs. Did we just forget what our goal is? Our goal is not to see Kirk Cousins put up great stats. Yeah, his completion percentage high. Yeah, he puts up a lot of passing yards. Yeah, his touchdown interception ratio is great. He's an accurate quarterback. I don't care. I want to win. The most important quarterback stat is win-loss ratio. And that is why I love Kirk Cousins, but that is why the Vikings should look to trading away Kirk Cousins because under this regime has not worked. It has not worked. The best years we've seen with the Minnesota Vikings in the last couple decades that I can remember was the 2009 Vikings and the 2017 Vikings, who were completely different than the Minnesota Vikings are today, who had an unstoppable defense and an excellent run game both of those seasons. You look at this year with the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings look good. They look good on offense. Defense has been horrendous, but they look good on offense. And yeah, Vikings look like a Super Bowl offense. Put that aside. What is holding the Vikings back? It is obviously coaching staff and injuries. But what is also holding the Vikings back from a Super Bowl is the fact that we don't have a Super Bowl contending quarterback. You can make the Super Bowl off of defense and a solid quarterback. You can't make the Super Bowl off of a solid quarterback and an awful defense. This is just facts. This is just facts. And that's why the Minnesota Vikings should look possibly, if they can get the right trade, to trading away Kirk Cousins. Because if the Vikings don't make the playoffs this season, Vikings aren't making it in the next season with Kirk Cousins anyways. So why not just trade him away? Vikings fans, we forget what our goal is. We brought in Kirk Cousins to win a Super Bowl. We're expected to be an easy out in the playoffs, or maybe not even make the playoffs as the Philadelphia Eagles are coming in as hot as they are and are likely going to win out, and the Vikings have to play the Packers and the Rams. Vikings, if we miss the playoffs, it's not just get rid of Mike Zimmer. It's not just get rid of Clint Kubiak. It's a full-on rebuild. When you rebuild a team, you have to start with your head coach. What do you do after that? You get a quarterback. After you get a head coach and a quarterback, you build around that quarterback. Look at what the Chargers are doing. The Chargers have went from a god-awful team to a Super Bowl contending team in just a few years. Why? Because they did exactly that. That's what the Vikings have to do. It's not just get rid of Mike Zimmer. And I'm a Kirk Cousins fan. I am. I like Kirk Cousins. But what I like even more is winning. And that's why if the Vikings want to win a Super Bowl, it's not going to happen in the next 2 years as long as Kirk Cousins is our quarterback. We have to look to a new head coach, and we have to look to a potential new quarterback, whether that's in the draft or in free agency. Vikings should try to trade for Russell Wilson, maybe. That's a possibility. That's a huge upgrade from Kirk Cousins, and he's not worth $45 million. So $45 million in guaranteed money in 2022. Who could look to trade for that contract? Well, we're going to take a look at that. Minnesota Vikings, in the NFL right now, there are 9 teams expected to be in the 2022 quarterback hunt. 9 teams are expected to need quarterbacks going into the 2022 offseason. Those 9 teams are the Denver Broncos, Pittsburgh Steelers, as Ben Roethlisberger is going to go, Denver Broncos, because Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock are both injury prone. They have to look to a new quarterback, and they are a quarterback away from being a contending team. The Houston Texans, obviously, they need every position. They'll probably not trade. The Carolina Panthers, another team to look at. The Washington football team, that's another team to look at. They really could have a very good team. But once again, Kirk Cousins is not going to go back to Washington. Miami Dolphins, again, Tua has been playing terrible with them. He's shown some light, but again, has been playing terrible with them. New Orleans Saints, that'd be a great spot for Kirk Cousins to go. I don't believe the Vikings would make a trade with the Saints, though. Seahawks, another position, because Russell Wilson has talked about a trade, and the Vikings could maybe make a trade. Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins, a little trade right there. Both came out of the same draft in the same round, the 3rd round of that draft. That's a great quarterback draft. And then also, I threw the Cleveland Browns on that list. Browns fans are going to hate me for that, but again, we all saw how bad Baker Mayfield's been playing this season. We can't just dismiss the fact Baker Mayfield's been a terrible quarterback this season. And his main role is just handing the ball off and throwing to his tight ends. Anybody can do that, and Kirk Cousins could do it even better than Baker Mayfield. And that's why that's another team that could be looking for a quarterback. So out of those 9 teams right there, I'd expect we're going to highlight one. We're going to highlight one team, and that's the Denver Broncos. Because the thing about the Denver Broncos right now, they are a quarterback away from contending. They are. And you look at that offense, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, that's an excellent, one of the best running back duos in the NFL. Outside of that, Noah Fant's a very solid tight end. Their wide receiving core is ridiculous. With Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is a very underrated player. He's excellent route runner and great pass catcher. He also can make plays after the catch. You just haven't seen him do it so much this season because he's been injured, and also because Teddy Bridgewater has been injured, and also he's been playing terrible after the second half of the season. And then Drew Lock is also on their offense as well. But then outside of that, KJ Hamler, I mean, they're just stacked. And you look at that offense with the Denver Broncos, what do all of those players I just said have in common? They're young. They're young. They're all in their 1st or 2nd contract. What do they need in order to compete? A very young offense with that much talent, a veteran quarterback who's been in the league long enough to be able to bring them to the next step. And that is Kirk Cousins. And that's why the Vikings should make a trade with the Denver Broncos. Not only are they a very young offense, a talented offense, and could use Kirk Cousins in order to compete for a Super Bowl, but that aside, we have a good relationship with the Denver Broncos anyways. We practiced with them last year. I mean, Mike Zimmer's been there before. He has good relation with them. And as a matter of fact, my prediction was also that Mike Zimmer would be their defensive coordinator next season as well. Not only would Kirk Cousins go there, but Mike Zimmer would go there as well. And the Denver Broncos are, if they want to compete in the AFC West, if they want to compete in an AFC West with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr, 3 great quarterbacks, they need a great quarterback of their own. And that's why they could make a trade with the Minnesota Vikings for Kirk Cousins. I would love to see that happen. They have the money, they have the potential with them, and they also have a lot of star players on defense. Now, they just traded away Von Miller, but that aside, Justin Simmons, I mean, they have a lot of great players on the defensive side of the ball as well. One of those players is also Shamar Stephen. He's also with them, which is pretty funny. They also have Mike Boone. So a lot of past Vikings are with that team as well. You look at it, what will the Vikings get for it? Trading with the Denver Broncos. That's my number 1 choice, because I would like him to be traded into the AFC and just out of sight with the Minnesota Vikings. We're not going to have to play him in the next 3 years. That would be nice to see. And the AFC West would be stacked with Kirk Cousins. That would be the toughest division in the NFL if Kirk Cousins was in orange, that beautiful orange in Denver. But you take a look at it. If the Vikings want to make a trade with the Denver Broncos to trade away Kirk Cousins, if the Vikings do want to trade away Kirk Cousins, which I already went over it, they should. If the Vikings do want to trade away Kirk Cousins, Denver Broncos should be their number 1 spot. They have the cap and they have the draft capital to trade for Kirk Cousins. What would they get? First off, they're going to have to take on a Kirk Cousins $45 million guaranteed money of a contract. So what would the Vikings have to do? They're going to have to take one of their garbage contracts as well. I don't know who there is, but there's probably some overpaid player that is far too old in the team that they would likely give us to try to free up cap space for their team. We'll take it. We'll take whatever garbage contract they have, because why? Because we want to win. We want a Super Bowl. But what we also want on top of that is a day 2 draft pick. I don't believe the Vikings can get a first round draft pick from the Denver Broncos, as they're expected to pick somewhere in the 20s or maybe early 10s. I believe they do have they're 7-7 right now, so they'll be picking around where the Vikings are. If we can get a first round pick for Kirk Cousins, I know quarterbacks are valued very high. That would be awesome. I would definitely take that. Don't think it's going to happen. I believe a second or third round is more likely. But if the Vikings do that, that would be such a good trade for the Minnesota Vikings. Why? Because we can look to finally rebuild. You guys, I'm sorry, but the Vikings have to rebuild. And yeah, we're coming off of 2 wins. It's good to see. Vikings can make a playoff run. We're in the playoff picture. Yeah, I don't care. Okay, I want to win a Super Bowl. I don't care about these playoff. Vikings are in the playoff picture. We're not going to make a run. Vikings aren't going to go in the road in the playoffs. We saw how we played so far in the road this season. We saw our 3 performances on primetime this season. Vikings are either going to be an easy out or one and done in the playoffs. It's just going to happen. It is. The 3 games we played on primetime so far this season, Pittsburgh Steelers, we played great in the first half. Terrible second half performance. That was at home. Away game on Monday Night Football. Really just crapped the bed, and we looked terrible in that game as well and ended up winning. And then even worse against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Come on, Vikings fans. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. If the Vikings beat the Rams, Vikings beat the Packers, still, they're going to make it playoffs, and I just don't see a scenario where the Vikings can go on the road and make a Super Bowl run. It's just unrealistic. It's a less than 1% chance that actually happens. If the Vikings don't make a Super Bowl run, they have to look to rebuild. Obviously, that starts with Mike Zimmer. We can't just dismiss the fact that Mike Zimmer has been holding Kirk Cousins back. But after that, you want to rebuild around the pass. You want to rebuild this offense. Vikings, like I said on this podcast multiple times, Vikings are a top 5 offense in the NFL. Not only are we a top 5 offense in the NFL, but we are the youngest offense in the NFL. And we're top 5. You guys, that is a perfect rebuilding opportunity. I don't know how Kellen Mond's going to look with the team. And that's why it's rough to see. Because if the Vikings trade with the Denver Broncos, take Drew Lock. Take someone, because we're not looking to compete in 2022. Let's be completely honest. We're not going to compete in 2022 with this Minnesota Vikings team. Not only has our offense been underperforming, but our defense has been bottom 5 in the NFL. They've been god-awful, and I hate to see it. This Vikings defense does not deserve to be that good. But you look at it, if the Vikings can make a trade with the Denver Broncos after this season, after Mike Zimmer's gone, we have to look to rebuild. And that starts with the head coach. That starts with the quarterback. And then you get your franchise quarterback and you build around it. Like I said, I'm tired of being a mediocre team. The worst thing in the NFL is being a mediocre team. You get humiliated in the playoffs. You pick in the 20s in the draft. You got to either tank or be a bottom 10 team in the NFL, or you got to be a Super Bowl contending team. Everything in between sucks. It does. And this is the same story I've seen with the Vikings team the last 2 decades that I've watched the Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, if they can trade away Kirk Cousins to the Denver Broncos, that would be a good trade destination for him to go. He would look really good in that orange on their offense as well. Just leading their offense, and they could compete in the AFC West. That is the only chance the Denver Broncos have at competing in the AFC West, by the way. But again, Pittsburgh Steelers, there's other teams that could trade for him as well. Vikings, if they can, we have to look to rebuild. Don't give Kirk Cousins another contract extension. I don't know what else there is to see. I really don't. I'm not a Kirk Cousins hater. I love the guy. What I'm a hater of is losing. What I'm a hater of is being a mediocre team. That's what I'm a hater of. Don't throw this Kirk Cousins has all this passing stats at me. Don't throw Kirk Cousins has a completion percentage. The most important quarterback stat is win-loss ratio. The most important quarterback stat is how many wins you have and how many losses you have. That's the most important quarterback stat. It is. QBR is also another important one that people don't mention very much, and you look at passer rating as well. You take a look at it, though. I love Kirk Cousins, but if the Vikings want to compete, when I say compete, I'm talking about a Super Bowl team within the next 5 years, within the next decade. The Vikings have to look to rebuild. Starts with Mike Zimmer, starts with Clint Kubiak. After you get a head coach, you need to bring in a quarterback. Young, offensive-minded head coach with a new franchise quarterback is what the Vikings will have to do if they want to compete going forward. Thank you.